With 2,500 people under death sentence in the United States, only 11 people were executed in 2021. Today we will investigate the cause of delay of execution. I watch true crime shows, as I'm sure many of you do, and I see the heinous capital crimes committed by these criminals, and I believe they should be sentenced to death. I've done extensive research on the death penalty and am qualified to speak with you all today. We will talk about the reason for delay in execution in the United States, from pushback from pharmaceutical companies, court trials surrounding the drug's constitutionality, and laws about their storage and access. First, we will begin with a pushback from the pharmaceutical companies. 3 companies hold the key to the lethal injection drug in the United States. The pushback remains due to botched executions. Throughout the history of the death penalty, several people did not die, calling into question the Eighth Amendment, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishments. According to an article called Lethal Injections, Can Pharma Kill the Death Penalty? Botched executions occur when, quote, there is a breakdown in or departure from the protocol for a particular method of execution, end quote, according to the Death Penalty Information Center. An example lies within the same website. Quote, because of equipment failure and human error, Walker suffered excruciating pain during his execution. According to Gary Sutterfield, an engineer from the Missouri State Prison who was retained by the state of Illinois to assist with Walker's execution, a kink in the plastic tubing going to Walker's arm stopped the deadly chemicals from reaching Walker. In addition, the extravenous needle was inserted pointing at Walker's fingers instead of his heart, prolonging the execution. This falls under cruel and unusual punishments. Here's something to consider. Do you think the Eighth Amendment truly prohibits the use of lethal injection in the United States? And do you think others who share the same ideal are part of the reason there is such a pushback or such a delay in execution? Here's where the pushback truly lies. According to the Death Penalty Information Center, quote, American pharmaceutical companies universally oppose what they consider to be the misuse of their medicines to take the lives of prisoners, and the medical community universally deems it unethical for medical personnel to participate in executions, end quote. 7 out of 19 executions, or 37%, are considered to be botched as of 2022. Lethal injections have the highest rate of botched executions. Here's something to consider. Why, then, do we use this method to carry out executions? Next, we'll talk about the court trials surrounding the drug's constitutionality. Several cases have occurred, all surrounding the Eighth Amendment. One court case occurred in 2014. Quote, after a third flawed lethal injection procedure involving midazolam in the United States in 2014, several Oklahoma death row inmates took the issue to the Supreme Court the following year. The group argued that midazolam does not reliably result in the level of unconsciousness necessary to prevent suffering, and that the lethal injection involving the drug therefore constitutes cruel and unusual punishments, end quote, according to the Death Penalty Information Center. The Supreme Court ruled against the prisoners, upholding the idea that the lethal injection drugs are constitutional. This was not the only court case, but it was the most significant. The use of the lethal injection across 27 states that have legal executions remains the main cause, or the main form of executions. It is the most common, as 1,388 executions happened by lethal injection since 1976. Although there are shortages, pushback from pharmaceutical companies, the argument of the Eighth Amendment, lethal injection remains a top dog in choice of execution. Like I said, it's the primary method in 27 states, except South Carolina, where electrocution is the primary method. It is stated to be the most the cheapest and most humane method. So here's something to consider. Why then is it that an average of 19.7 years is spent on death row awaiting the execution? Next, we'll talk about the laws surrounding the drug storage and access. According to the South Carolina Department of Corrections, quote, chemicals necessary to carry out lethal injection are handled, stored, and disposed of in accordance with a strict protocol that limits the number of individuals who have access to the chemicals. This protocol had to be approved by the Drug Enforcement Administration and the Department of Health and Environmental Control. According to the National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty, sodium thipentanol is a controlled substance, and panchromonium bromide and potassium chloride are available only by prescription. Only a licensed medical practitioner can obtain and use these drugs. And those were the 3 drugs that are involved in the lethal injection. The Federal Drug Enforcement Administration, the Department of Health and Environmental Control, and the State Board of Pharmacy are essentially the only departments that are responsible for upholding the drugs storage and access. The disposal and use is strictly watched. Next, we'll move to the summary of events. Lethal injection remains the reason for delay in execution. Questioning in the constitutionality of the death penalty and use of the lethal injection to carry out executions, pushback from companies, and strict laws governing the access and use of the drugs remain the reason for the delay surrounding the lethal injection. I hope you all leave here today with one question in mind. Is the delay in execution truly due to the use of the lethal injection?